list. Investigators were convinced that he knew something about the missing girls and might be responsible for their disappearance. A considerable amount of effort was expended to find him. In fact, the police devoted so much attention to tape recorder man that they completely overlooked another suspect. In the aftermath of their disappearance, a friend of the Lyon sisters reported to detectives that a scruffy, long-haired man had been eyeing the sisters up. In fact, he'd been so fixated on the girls that their friend, barely 12 years old herself, had decided to confront him. The man had shuffled off after she berated him for staring at Sheila and Kate. The description that the girl provided was of a white male, late teens to early 20s, shabbily dressed, scars on his left cheek, and a bad case of acne. The police attached very little importance to this report. They were fixated on their main suspect. Despite their considerable efforts, they would never find tape recorder man. The search for the Lyon sisters was protracted and intense, involving police from multiple jurisdictions, hundreds of volunteers, and even the Maryland National Guard. Vacant lots, stream beds, abandoned buildings, tracts of forest, all were combed without result. There was a reported sighting of the girls, trussed up and gagged in the back of a beige station wagon in Manassas, Virginia. There were calls from psychics and scam artists. There was a callous attempt by some sick individual to extort $10,000 from the distraught parents. And then there was a claim by a man named Lloyd Welch that he had witnessed the actual abduction. Welch first reported his sighting to a security guard at the Wheaton Mall 1 week after the girls vanished. The guard then called the police, and Welch was transferred to an interrogation room and asked to repeat his story. He claimed to have seen an older man, dressed in a brown suit, bundling the girls into a car and driving away with them. The man, he said, walked with a limp. Since the person he was describing was almost an exact match for their main suspect, the police were naturally interested. However, there were inconsistencies in Welch's statement, and so he was asked to take a polygraph. He agreed and failed. That right there should have roused the suspicions of investigators. However, their obsession with tape recorder man was still to the fore, hampering their efforts. Rather than flagging Welch as a suspect, they took him for an attention seeker, trying to insinuate himself into the investigation, perhaps to cadge a reward. Welch was sent on his way with a warning not to waste police time. No one seemed to notice that he was an exact match for the man that the Lyon sisters' friend had described, the creep who had been staring so intently in their direction. These missteps by the investigative team clearly illustrate the dangers of prejudging a case. In any event, the investigation stumbled and stalled, faltered, and ground to a halt. 2 little girls had disappeared from a busy mall in broad daylight, and no one had any idea what had happened to them. Over the decades that followed, the case would haunt the Montgomery County Police Department. It was the one that everyone wanted answers to, the one that got away. Generations of detectives came and went, and many of them had a crack at it, poring over boxes of yellowing evidence, hoping to find something, anything they might have missed. One of those was Detective Chris Homrock. In 2013, he made a breakthrough. Homrock had been through the case file before, yet somehow he had never seen one particular piece of evidence until now. It was a 6-page transcript of the statement given by an 18-year-old named Lloyd Welch. Now, reading through that statement, the detective was stunned. Here was a guy who'd lied to the police, who'd failed a polygraph. Why hadn't he been looked at? It was time to redress that oversight. Finding Lloyd Welch was easy. He was in prison in Delaware, entering the final stretch of a 33-year prison term for sexually assaulting a 10-year-old girl. The relevance of that offense was not lost on Homrock. He and Detective Dave Davis sat down with Welch on October 16, 2013. The first words out of the convicted pedophile.